The Knights of the past. Can Scott Frost draw on nostalgia to recruit the UCF?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me as he does every single week is my good friend Jake Crane from Crane & Co. over at the Daily Wire. Please go check them out. Jake, the Combine is in the books. RJ Harvey had a pretty good Combine. You had Kobe Hudson at the Combine as well as some others. But I want to talk about the Knights of the past. Now, Scott Frost didn't recruit RJ Harvey, but I think his voice can still be important for Scott Frost in recruiting to say UCF is someplace where you can make a name for yourself and go on to the next level and do something on the pro level.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Scott Frost, is in a position where he's done it before, so it makes it easier for those players to point back and say, hey, obviously he's done it before, he can do it again. But as far as just in general, yeah, especially if the player, enjoyed his time at the university, he's going to say nice things. He's going to, what do the kids call it now? To gas it up a little bit. And again, how you're treated is how you're going to tell people that may have the prospect of going there. I just think from a family standpoint, if, your little brother wanted to go there and they treated you right, you got a much better chance of getting him to go there. So I don't expect anybody or any former player to tell somebody not to go to UCF because now Scott Frost is there. In fact, I think it could maybe be a boost. You have some players that may say, not out loud to everybody else, but to the prospects, I wish he was there when I was there. Or we could have done even more. So having the pass that he does at UCF obviously helps there in general, but it doesn't seem like there's any rifts with any of the players that are moving on. So I expect all good things and possibly even use it as a boost in recruiting.
Looking at the previous coach, Cam Newton hung around that program when Gus was there. Now, obviously, Cam did not go to UCF, but that was a former Heisman winner, national champion, Super Bowl making NFL MVP quarterback around your program that you have to point to say, hey, look, no, he didn't play here, but this is a guy who I had influence on. And now I know Scott Frost has brought Mackenzie Milton back to the program. He was part of that undefeated team in 2017. But in your mind, Jake, does it matter that he didn't coach some of these guys that may be like, promoting his program or him asking them to promote his program?
No, not necessarily. And again, there's more than, just McKenzie he can point to. And you want to surround yourself with as many guys who understand how it works around UCF. And when you are operating at your zenith, they still have cachet. I mean, they still demand respect in the eyes of not only the players that are there or that the recruits that you bring in, and they know the way that it has to work for it to work. So look, coaches will always, but that's why having guys drafted is still important, whether it's in college basketball, college baseball, college football, because I know NIL is huge, but in the world of college football, NFL still means more dollars than what NIL does. And if you've shown somebody the way and they can not only see the path, but they can see guys who've trotted down the path and have had success at the next level, it's a huge recruiting tool. I mean, we used to have guys even at South Alabama call recruits and talk to them and tell them, hey, look, I know it may not be Alabama, it may not be Auburn, it may not be Florida, it may not be Miami, but if you go here, you can still reach the levels and it's still as easy almost to get there as if you were to go to those other places.
NFL greater than NIL. Every time you come on this show, you drop a bar. Put it on a t-shirt.
It's a disorder, man. I think I'm on the spectrum somewhere, but they just haven't figured it out yet.
Look, obviously NIL has changed and made this more like the NFL in terms of how teams operate. I still think we're headed toward GMs and salary caps, and I just don't know how you avoid that with all this money involved. But if you're Scott Frost, you've got to get creative and you've got to change with the landscape to make sure that UCF still looks attractive to high school recruits. Now, kind of pivoting a little bit, we're talking about Knights of the past, right? With the portal, the game has changed, and there's an idea that you can build a program quickly through the portal, Jake. But I've talked to a lot of coaches that still feel like the base for long-term
Mhm.
sustainability is high school recruiting. You got to get guys in your program from high school that learn your ways, and then when you bring in guys from the portal, that culture takes over for those guys, and then you can keep it pushing. Do you see portal recruiting overtaking high school recruiting here in the next few years? And how does Scott Frost adjust all that?
Well, look, I think we're always, circumstances dictate outcomes. When you have it rocking and rolling, and I've always said, when it comes to the transfer portal, I don't think you want to build the ship out of the transfer portal. I think more years than not, you want to plug holes in the ship with the transfer portal. And some coaches slice it different ways. Deion Sanders is going to do it one way. Mike Norvell is going to do it one way. Other coaches are going to do it other ways. And you always want to develop guys. You want to be able to lean on that development and then bring in, the sides to the entree through the transfer portal. You lose a couple guys important at a position group. You got a couple other young guys. You want to bring in a proven commodity through the transfer portal to fix that. But Scott Frost is not in a position right now where you can lean on development because you're going back there for your first year and you need to make a splash. You need to make a splash early. And it's hard to do that with young guys. It's hard to do that with guys that aren't proven commodities. And then after that first year, you build on it through recruiting, and then you start developing. So again, where you're at and your circumstances are going to dictate how you do it. Now you got to be fluid. If you're not evolving, you're dissolving in this world of college football. So some years you may have to lean on the transfer portal more. And a lot of times that's early in your tenure, but you want to get to a point where you're not relying on turnover in football. And in baseball, it's different, right? I can bring in a guy that's throwing 98 with a 93 mile per hour slider and a change up, and we can work around that. In basketball, I can bring in a 7-footer and he can win us games single-handedly, and we can build around that. Football does not work like that. That's why it's the ultimate team sport. So if you're relying on constant turnover and having to just totally, revamp the house every offseason, ask Mike Norvell how that's working out right now. Like, you can't rely on that every single season. So if you're Scott Frost, you're going to have to lean heavy on the portal early. You got to show that you can recapture the magic. Once you've done that, then you go get your recruits and you start developing and you plug the holes in the ship with the transfer portal.
Agreed. Look, springtime is here, Jake. It's March. It feels like this year is flying by. And with springtime comes spring games. Lots of debate over whether to eliminate spring games overall or not. We're going to talk about that in our next segment. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is a reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources, guys, and the last product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Should we eliminate spring games altogether? And I mean, they're not going away for now, but you've got to make them useful while they're here. Now, I've seen some absolutely awful spring game formats over the years where you've got these complicated scoring systems. If you're Scott Frost in your first spring, how do you get the most out of this first spring game in terms of evaluation and finding out what you have on your team right now and how guys perform under the lights?
Well, look, I'm sure Scott Frost would just rather have a practice in the stadium. I mean, most coaches would. The spring games are for the fans. I mean, you know what the other side is doing. You're running vanilla stuff. Nobody's ever won a job in the spring game. I mean, I did it for 10 years at the Division I level. Nobody ever overtook somebody on the depth chart because they had a good spring game. But if you're Scott Frost, this is your first year back. You're still trying to figure out your roster. So if I was him, I would literally just have a practice with a heavy team period at the end. in the spring game, because I can get more out of that than going out there and running peanut butter and jelly or vanilla ice cream when the defense knows everything we're doing by the way we're aligned and the checks that we have. So it's all an evaluation process. The thing that you get the most out of the spring game right now, outside of being able to bring the fans in and it helps the local economy and stuff like that, is you get to show the guys how we act when we're in the stadium. What do we do? How do we prepare? How do we warm up? Protocol on the sidelines, this, that, and the other. That's really the biggest teaching thing that goes on during the spring game. Most coaches, when it comes down to it, are just trying to get through it healthy, because by that point, you've had your good surprises, you've had your bad surprises. As far as what to do with the spring game, I don't think we get rid of it. I think we revamp it. I would love, and again, how feasible is this? It'll probably never happen, but college football's changed so much. I mean, why the hell not at the end of the day? I think you should play somebody from in-state and a lesser opponent for your spring game, because I think it does multiple things. You play against a scheme that you haven't seen, right? So it's more realistic. The risk of injury is the same. Anytime you put the pads on there and go out there and play, your risk of getting hurt, you're actually risk of getting hurt more when you're not going full speed and you're just going through the motions, and you get to hit somebody else. I mean, guys are so sick of hitting the same guys over and over and over again in spring. You see this in fall camp. And then also as well, I think it's more enjoyable for the fans, because if I'm going out there and watching my team play my team and the offense is shredding the defense, the headline isn't, man, we're really good on offense. It's, man, we suck on defense. I would love to see a lesser opponent be brought in and actually play, somebody else. I think that'd be better for everybody.
Yeah, UCF does not have another team from the state of Florida on their schedule in 2025. I think it would be cool to see them scrimmage against another in-state team.
Get like West Florida to come up. Like, get somebody. I'm not saying you go and play Florida State, or if you're Auburn, you play Alabama. Like, it's just, there's teams that would come up. You give them a little bit of money, especially if we end up erasing all these group of 5 games at some point once this Super League hits. I think it would be better for everybody involved.
Absolutely. Look, the other idea that I like that's coming from this is raising money for using these games to raise money for charity or things that help.
You mean NIL?
Right?
That's what it is now. That's what charity. It's not. They're not trying to raise money for St. Jude anymore. It's, hey, we need an offensive tackle. If you told all the fans that the proceeds from this $15 ticket are going to go for us fixing the defensive line, boy, you would pack that place out, wouldn't you? That's the greatest sale there is. Oh, y'all want to win? Let's play a game called Let's Go Get a Guard. And y'all all come up to this game and pay this $15, and we'll go out and get us a guard that can pull, that can pass pro, that can down block, that can even play center. God forbid something happens to the middleman. That's what I'd use it for.
Yeah, I agree. Look, the capacity at the Bounce House, I believe, is about 45,000 people.
Do the math on that.
They all pay $20 for a ticket. And it all goes to NIL. That's a hell of a deal, I think.
Yeah, I'm not Goodwill Hunting, but I know that adds up to a lot of money.
I think there's some creative ways that they can use that, especially with the schools potentially taking over the NIL funds more directly with the changes that you and I know are coming in the next couple of months, to how that is regulated due to legislation that's passing. Look, college football needs a unified standard for NIL with different state laws. I know it's going to be difficult, but it's definitely a problem they have to solve. And once they do, maybe you can look at things like the spring game. Let schools handle it on their own, how they want. You don't have to play one if you don't want to. I heard a coach say, I'd rather have OTAs in June than play a spring game, right? I'd rather my guys spend that time developing their bodies and getting ready for the long haul of the season than, going through these fan service practices that essentially amount to nothing. So
look, I'm telling you what the coaches that want OTAs want. Here's what they want. One is more time to get healthy, right? That's what it's for. Like guys that tear an ACL during the season, right? Stealing those extra couple months. And then if you do OTAs, you're really just rolling from OTAs into fall camp. What you're really doing is just extending fall camp. And that's what they want, because again, it gives you more time to get ready to play, which what I want to know is If it's just about the calendar, then okay. But if I were to tell these coaches, look, you got to start in the spring. We can't push it back. Would you rather have OTAs like kind of during the spring, that style, or would you rather play somebody else in the spring game? That's what I would want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, what it all amounts to is you've got to win and you've got to get guys to the NFL. And if you're Scott Frost, you have to create an NFL pipeline from Orlando to those big teams. Look, we're going to talk about how he creates that pipeline next on Locked On UCF. Jake, creating that pipeline is important. Getting guys to the NFL is important. You and I know you need that on your resume to say, hey, if you come here, we'll connect you at the next level. We are a place where coaches come and they say, hey, look, I'm looking for a running back. I'm looking for a defensive lineman. Who do you have on your roster that maybe we should take a look at? Now, look, in the spring, I know the combine just wrapped up, but there are a lot of guys who opt out of their combine in favor of pro day, Jake. You guys, a lot of guys, they don't want to go to the combine. They said, I'd rather be in my training facility. If you're a receiver catching passes from a quarterback I choose, right? Running drills in a place where I'm familiar, running a 40 on a turf that I feel comfortable on, to show off for the scouts. And all that is going to help you, if you're Scott Frost, get guys to the NFL. What do the numbers need to look like for Scott Frost? Do you need QBs in the NFL every year? What do you need to see if you're a recruit from Scott Frost as far as getting guys to the pros to say, I feel comfortable going to UCF?
Well, look, I mean, you have different types of people, right? Some guys want to follow other guys. Not that UCF's never had anybody in the NFL, but like some other guys want to be the first guy to do it, right? If you hadn't had a quarterback that's gone to the NFL, sometimes somebody wants to come in and be that guy, right? Be the one that kind of sets the standard and everybody else falls behind that person. Other guys are like, all right, I saw him do it, so I'm going to go there so I can do it. And I always laugh when people are like, well, at the end of the day, college and the NFL is different. So, you don't need all NFL players to win. Well, you don't need all NFL players on your team to win. But, buddy, if you don't have any NFL players, you're not going to win. Not in this sport. I know you can play 35 years in college now, but football is not exactly a sport where your body gets better when you're 27. Right? Like you look at Auburn's basketball team right now, they're like all 25 and 26. Great. In basketball, you can get away with that. And I got a 3-tech that's 27 years old, like that's been playing for 6 years. You're beat up. So you want some guys, you want, if you can have all NFL players at every position, that'd be great. But you just want to be consistently putting guys, regardless of position, in the league. Because on draft night, when all these high school prospects are watching these guys get drafted, it's nice when UCF, the logo pops up, with the 33rd pick in the second round, from UCF, whatever. And then when they're watching the NFL games, which they all do, and before the game, the rosters pop up and these guys say their names. It's really nice for it to pop up and say RJ Harvey, UCF. Like, oh, whoa, okay. Like it's all encompassing. So you have to have NFL players to win in college at a high level. And it helps in recruiting immensely. I mean, you hear Nick Saban talk about it all the time. The best recruiting tactic they had was, hey, guess what? Here's a spreadsheet of all the wide receivers that we have in the NFL right now from Alabama. Here's how much money they make. Oh, you love football? Great. You love the NFL? Great. You love money? Even better. Come here.
Yeah. Right now, there are currently 15 UCF Knights on active NFL rosters. That includes guys like Matt Prater, Shaquille Griffin, John Rice Plumlee, Jordan Akins, to name a few. But, if you're UCF, you do need to improve that, right? You've got to get guys up there. Now you're in the Big 12, so you don't have what I call that conference handicap, where it's, we're Conference USA, or we're this. You're in the Big 12.
You don't get the breakfast ball off the first tee like I do.
All right.
So people will know what that means, Mike. So everybody out there who plays golf is like, yeah, okay, I get it. I understand.
I always take my breakfast ball, by the way. Even if the first one is good, I take my
Oh,
breakfast
for sure. I'm getting 2 hacks
but,
on that first.
you
I
know,
didn't pay $45 to come out of here and try and win the Masters. I'm getting 2 hacks off the first tee.
for sure. But if you're Scott Frost, I don't know how many breakfast balls you're going to get in your first year. So you certainly do need to come out swinging and show that the system itself, the play calling is creative. And I think that's going to be the big thing for Scott Frost. It's, you know, do I have a system that guys are excited about playing in? And does that system translate to the NFL so that you can create that pipeline? Because I think a knock on a lot of these old, like, hurry up spread offenses where they weren't preparing guys for pro style offenses. And I think that that's got to be a focus for Scott Frost is, you know, making sure his system, right, is preparing guys for the next level.
Yeah, well, look, I've always been, and I firmly believe in this. As the system is important, but the personnel makes the system work. I've
Mhm.
worked with offensive coordinators that are very average that looked really, really smart because the players were really good. And I've worked with other guys that are
Mm.
savants. I'm talking about speaking of Goodwill Hunting. I mean, they're figuring formulas out, like all this other stuff. But you go on the field and it looks awful because the players aren't very good. You get in good enough players. It doesn't matter if you're drawing a circle on a piece of paper with a smiley face next to it. If they can ball, they'll go to the NFL. So I never wanted, because you can get away with more things in college systematically than you can in the pros. That's why a lot of the offenses and most of the offenses are in the pros are so similar. They came up with a name for it. It's called a pro style offense. In
Yeah.
college, you got people running more RPOs, even though that has bled its way in the NFL a little bit. Shout out my guy Teddy Bridgewater. But they're still heavy on pro style offenses. So if you're Scott Frost, if your system works, don't change the system. Get better players in there to work the system. And if they're good enough, they run fast enough, they jump high enough, they hit hard enough, they're versatile enough, they'll find their way into the league.
I agree 100%. I think Scott Frost is the guy to do it. Jake Crane from Crane and Co. over at the Daily Wire. Jake, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
It's very, very simple. You go to Google on whatever computer you have, your phone, your laptop, something cool I don't know about yet, and you type in Crane and Company. It's CRAIN and Company. We're everywhere. If you watch your podcast, we're on everywhere, basically. If you listen, we're everywhere there too. So, come check us out. It's a good time.
Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out our friends at Locked On Big 12. You can find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us here tomorrow on Locked